Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Center. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, obviously, you have Harry still being in this process where, like, he's working with Lou, because Lou's counting on him for the investigation, but Harry's still kind of almost like, yeah, sure, but, like, because it's like he doesn't want to admit the fact is that he wants to work on the case, that he kind of needs to work on the case, because he finds himself, like, I mean, he's literally, because this has never happened before with any of the other cases, like, it got inside of his head, sure, but never in the way that it has with Percy, because, once again, Percy's a very interesting case, because more often than not, like, Cora, Julian were already arrested. Jamie at least was out and about in the world, and Harry had conversations with him. Percy's nowhere. Like, they have no idea where she is. Did she actually go over the cliff? But, like, the divers can't find her, and even Harry's at this point is like, well, maybe those resources would be used elsewhere. But I think just Harry can't bring himself to admit, like, he, you know, because what it means, the fact is, like, oh, he retired, and he just got that itch, and just, or, like, did he always just want to come back, and he just didn't realize it until Percy's disappearance, or Percy's disappearance made him want to come back. There's a lot to that, but basically, the first thing we find out is that CJ Lam, his fingerprints were all over the car, and later on, when they never really gave clarification to it, but I don't think they did. Like, his fingerprints being all over the car, like the windshield and the dash, I was like, that's from them, like, because it was like, oh, like, Harry's like, oh, it's from a struggle. I was like, because they never, I guess it's just kind of implied, but at the moment that happened, I was like, oh, it's because they were banging, right? Like, they were having sex. Like, that's what I immediately associated. Because, like, the way he was acting, I was like, especially when he's like, oh, yeah, I don't know her. It's like, oh, is there supposed to be, like, kind of a Romeo and Juliet thing? Because their family are beefing. So, like, I figured you'd want to keep that on the low. But the moment, like, they go and question CJ, and then, like, also, like, his dad's backing up his alibi and stuff like that. Because even I'm like, but I get, like, your families have their issues, but, like, why would you be keeping that a secret now that she's disappeared? But then later on, we see, like, on his computer, he's got a whole bunch of pictures of Percy, and he's sniffing, like, what it seems like might be coke. You can only assume it's coke. But it's like, he's had a thing for Percy a lot. Like, I was wondering if it was like an unrequited love and they finally got together. But it's like, why would you still be keeping that a secret right now? But it turns out CJ's car, like, has, like, clay on it. And the only place that has that clay would be the area where they found Percy's car, which is near that, what's his name, Dees, the drug dealer. So it turns out, apparently CJ was there, like, Saturday night or whatever, around, like, 7 or something, which, obviously, his father's alibi for him was a lie about him, like, oh, we closed up together, so, but it's like, Harry's like, I know what you're doing here, you can continue doing whatever you're doing, I'm just looking into this, because this is what's important to me, and so looking into it, obviously found out about CJ's alibi being a lie, and so they have to bring him in. His mom is, like, scared for him, like, what's going on, like, whatever you did, just, like, let me know, because CJ won't talk to either one of them about it. So they end up bringing CJ in because he lied and because his mom doesn't know who Dees is, that, like, oh, he's the local drug dealer and stuff like that, so he doesn't know that, but, she doesn't know that, but they start talking to him and we find out more about him and Percy's relationship. I mean, because what they started talking about earlier on was, like, because they ran into her, like, her ex, and, like, obviously it was about the whole Colin thing. The reason why is because Colin, I think just naturally Percy has a short temper, but I think it's just, like, the way Colin tried to make him look small in front of Percy, I think that's what agitated him most. But also, like, Percy made some, like, I mean, not Percy, Colin made some, like, racist comments about, like, oh, like, he was borderline racist, because he was like, oh, like, I'm sure, like, you can beat Percy, my money's still on her, that she could beat you in, like, half of China or something like that. Like, he made a really, like, off-color comment like that. So, and Percy, like, I mean, I keep saying Percy, CJ attacked him, but then, like, he got on top of CJ. So it showcased not just CJ, it seems like Colin can lose his temper too. Like, there's definitely something there. So, I mean, we've seen that time and time again of just how aggressive they can be. I was trying to think, what was that thing I remember seeing Michael Mosley in where he was kind of a psychopath. I'm trying to remember what that was. It was something, oh, it was Castle, that's what it was. Because he played a serial killer at Castle. Like, he was actually a multi-arc serial killer. I want to say, like, seasons, 4, 5, and 6, like, their finales were connected to him. If I remember correctly, but I believe, yeah. because I was like, I knew I remember him playing like a scary role, and I just couldn't remember what it was, but it was like, yeah, him and Castle. Tangents and all that aside, Colin just definitely seems like he has his issues. But then we find out about like Percy and her ex, and her ex is like, yeah, like one time we were just meeting up, she showed up kind of messed up, and then she was like, yeah, we're done. And he never got an explanation for it. And Harry's like, do you think there was someone else? And I guess at that point, Harry was already filling in, wondering whether or not there was something between Percy and CJ. So we find out, like, first time, like, Percy came over to his place, she was kind of messed up on stuff. So it's like she was, at that point, already doing drugs. But she came over saying, like, if she told him something, he would hate her. And I'm like, it must have, I'd assume if it has anything, it's got to do with her family, like, their families. Like, there's some, like, dark secret there. Because obviously the Muldoons, and even like Meg says this later on, that like, oh, all we ever done was give them opportunities and help them. I'm like, is it that the Muldoon family stole something that actually belonged to like CJ's family or something? Like, what was it that she was like, if I tell you the truth, you're going to hate me? I don't know what to make of that. It sounds like there's like some shady business in the Muldoon family, and they might have done something super shady in the past. Maybe his parents know about it and they're just not letting him know, or maybe even they don't know about it. But I'm curious what it is, because whatever it is, Percy didn't say like, oh, you'd hate my family, you'd hate me. So she knows something, she did something, I don't know what it is. But CJ never got an answer for it, because he kisses her, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And then they proceed to kiss, because I think it was a situation where like she tried to put like whatever it was aside and just kind of enjoy the moment. And I have to talk about this too. It's like, it's so interesting, because like every one of these characters, I'd say Cora, I mean, everyone has their complicated relationships. Like I'd say, I mean, even as a child, Julian had his own, like, and I guess that's the point, like, all these characters that are the center characters are all messed up in their own right. Cora, Julian, Jamie, and Percy, but, like, when you look at, like, their interpersonal relationships, they're all kind of jacked up in their own ways, too. I feel like you definitely see that with, like, everything from, like, Cora's relationship with her family, Julian's relationship with his family, Jamie with his wife and his friend from college, and just what that did to him, and also now you have Percy's family, and just not just her, just the entire town, because I think the town itself is a representation of just like, because it's kind of built around the Muldoons, like they kind of run things, even to the point later on, like they found out about CJ's fingerprints being in the car because they got the information from Lewis, and even Harry's like, wait, you told them? It's like, it's an act of that investigation. Like, what? He doesn't grill him too much, but you know he wants to, but it's like Harry's not trying to overstep his bounds. I mean, this is I'm trying to remember, did he work with anyone in season 3? Yeah, he did. I think it was kind of his, yeah, because like in season 2 he worked with Hannah, so like this is like, I think that was still within the confines of his own like precinct and stuff like that, the whole Jamie thing, so he didn't have to go to a different town, because obviously season 2 he had to go home to like investigate, and so he was dealing with like the locals, like Hannah was like helping him with that, so this is his second time having to work with like the local cops, so he's not trying to overstep his boundaries, but he's, you know, almost he want to be like, why the hell did you, because once again, Lou's kind of an amateur at this, but it's like, the Muldoons have a lot of sway, so he's like, right, this, we're investigating, so they have every right to know, but it's like, no, it's an investigation, they shouldn't know the information unless it's pertinent, because now it put a target on CJ's back, because they're immediately like, oh, it had to be CJ, like he was hurting her, like, oh, look the way he attacked us, like he was hurt, it's like, no. Like, because they didn't bring it up at that point in time, but it's like, they should have, but the fact is, Percy and him had a relationship, but I think that would have just added more fuel to the fire of like, oh, but like, it's because she rejected him and blah, blah, blah. Like, Harry probably knew to hold back on that for that purposes, or maybe telling them would have been better. I mean, the way his family goes about it is like, there's no, like, helping it. Like, we do good, we do a great job, we're successful, we're hated. We talk, we get even more hate. So it's like a lose-lose situation. So that's why he lied about his son's alibi, because he's doing everything he can to protect him. But regardless, getting back to what I was talking about, the relationships, how Percy, like every time like she would come over to visit CJ, she would be super, super messed up. And I should also point out, like, what signified it early on to me, too, that something was going on between CJ and Percy was because, like, when he, as Harry was leaving earlier after their first talk with CJ, they see that little green thing, like, And he realizes, like, wait, Percy had one of those. Now, I brought it up before, like, each one of those are like totems, and they represent like a special connection Percy had with someone. Like the rope or whatever that she has, that she used for like that kind of ritual, like that lunar thing. Kind of like, almost like, oh, like here are some offerings to pray to a god or whatever. That represent her mom, her grandmother. So I knew that the totem, like, I know that thing that we later on found out CJ gave to her. I figured that it's like, right, it's supposed to be like a reminder of like the moment they had together. It's a reminder of not only a person but a specific moment with them. So it is, and it also showcases like, yeah, like Percy did care about him, that because she kept on to it. So that's why I'm like, there's at least two more objects, and each one is representative of a person and a moment. So those are like the people that are, I guess, like very important to Percy, for maybe just in the grand scheme of who she is, or maybe just important in just the most recent, who knows? Because we did learn like Percy did leave 9 months ago, but then 6 months ago she came back. Like what she did in that 3-month time frame, like why she wanted to leave is, you know, still unclear at this point in time. Her grandma's like, oh, because she wanted to experience the mainland and stuff like that, but it's like, maybe not. Because she talks about it with CJ a bit about like, yeah, things aren't great in this place, like just almost like how, like, she almost makes it seem like there's just this place will drown you, like it's just like she can't get away from it fast enough. She wants to get away because CJ thinks about getting away, going off, but he's also like, yeah, but no one will be here to help my family run the restaurant or the boats. So he feels like, thought of leaving, he feels guilty about it, you know. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting element and insight. Because, well, CJ did reference, like, oh, like, all the stuff that she made me do. And we find out later on, after Colin and them attack CJ, break into his family's restaurant and starts beating him up. And so, obviously, it's a thing of, like, you're making things worse for yourself by not talking because it makes you seem guilty. But once again, it's like his dad is like, we're doing everything we can to protect him, especially because, like, they're in the dark because CJ won't even talk to them about what's going on. But he's like, it's my life, so let me, you know, tell them about what's going on. The thing that happened is she started getting, like, the reason why he's doing, like, drugs now is because she got him addicted to it. It's like she was spiraling and she did like him, so she wanted to, like, you know, it's interesting because there is a parallel, because you can make the argument like whatever Percy was going through at the time, she kind of dragged him along with her, just because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like you kind of don't want to be alone. I mean, whether it's a conversation of misery loves company or whether there's a little bit more to it, it's not really clear at this point. But it's interesting because Sonia was talking to Harry about all the stuff, like the stuff that Percy had underlined in her book were about the Ouroboros, you know, the snake eating its tail, kind of life and death, like kind of that circle of it all. And Sonia talks about the fact is, because she asked Harry, like, had he ever thought about suicide? Because Harry was like, he talked to her in that time, like she seemed like a good kid, good head on her shoulders, like she seemed grounded and wise. It didn't seem like she was someone that was trying to like off herself. But then, you know, Sonia asked Harry, like, have you ever? And he was like, why do you ask? And she talked about her experience with it. It's like after a bad relationship, after a bad breakup and just things not working out, she couldn't paint, so she kind of felt useless because she didn't really know what her purpose was in the world. And the thought crossed her mind, and I was like, and even Harry's just kind of like, were you able to find a way past it? And for her sister got sick, and she took care of her sister. In that moment, she felt useful again. And I think there's an element to it, and I think that's the point she was trying to get across, that Harry's in a similar way. Like, he was kind of lost and stumbling after the whole Jamie thing. He walked away from his job, but now, like this, that's why he's latching onto this Percy thing so much, because obviously, like, he always latches onto every case. Granted, things went super sideways with the Jamie situation, especially, like, you know, being there when Jamie, like, being the reason why Jamie died, but also, like, being there when he died. Because at least with Julian and Cora, he was able to save them. Jamie, he couldn't. So he's adamant about, like, no, I got to save this person. I can't let it, you know, it happen. Like, can't she be saved? Is she already gone? Like, he just needs to find out. That's how his brain works, how he operates. But I think it's also Percy's disappearance gave him purpose again. Of like, this is something important. I've got to find out what's happening to you, especially when you're inside my head. And when they go to the cliff and everything, and Sonia's staring out at it, you know, Percy's inside of his head, like, should you really be dragging her down into the darkness with you? And he's like, what did he do to you? What did CJ do to you? She's like, I can't answer that. I'm just a voice inside your head. Just his own mind concocting her. And I think we're probably going to see that a lot more over the course of the season. And like I said, it's something we've never really experienced, like Harry's never experienced before now, because it just the uniqueness of just like the aspects of this case with Percy being gone, like whether that is dead, whether she disappeared of her own volition, whether she just straight up is being held captive by someone. We'll have to wait and see. But because Harry's not sure what he saw that night. He thought he saw what he saw, but you would have expected to see her body, not unless she didn't die and she wound up on the shore or something somewhere else, and that's where she is. We don't know. But circling back to the CJ thing, him being open about the fact is that things between him and Percy were spiraling, like to the point like she hurt him and wanted him to hurt her. And it's like, if he told the truth about that, it would have definitely looked bad about him. It would just made things worse in his corner. But he talks about the fact is when Percy left, she just up and left, like cut off all contact. That's why like he's obsessed with her. He always had a thing for her, but it's like she became a drug himself where he just couldn't let go. And even when he was away from her, like he couldn't, like he tried to move on and be like, she wanted nothing to do with you. She left the island, she came back. But eventually out of nowhere, like recently, she contacted him again after so much time of silence. And he's like, what's up with you? Like, you said nothing to me. Hey, let's go to D's and get high. But she's like, I don't do that anymore. He's like, yeah, right. She's like, no, I don't. Because whatever it is that she experienced off the island, I think it like I'm assuming it has something to do with this lunar stuff that she's into, and it's changed. Like maybe she was in a better place afterwards, but now it's spiraled into something bad. Maybe it turned into like a very like it started going down where it's like, yeah, it was good for her because maybe it was almost like a cult like thing where someone helped her through stuff, but then eventually it turned into a thing of it started doing more harm than good type of situation. So whatever the case may be, she doesn't get high anymore, but obviously it pisses CJ off because it's like, you did this to me. You fucked me up. Like, I'm messed up now because of you. Like, and now it's just kind of like, right, you're just going to like cause all this damage in my life and then just bail. And she's apologetic. It says because she was dealing with a lot. She's like, I'm dealing with a lot of shit. And it's like, yeah, but once again, it's back to you. Because she's like, yeah, I'm dealing with something greater than. And it's like, no. At the end of the day, you're making it still about you. Like, what about me? Like, you cut me dry. You messed me up. You swirled me up in your darkness. And now I'm here left, having to pick up the pieces to myself. And here you are contacting me again. And it's like, he found himself again addicted to her. So he's like, I hate you. And she's like, please don't say that. Because she admits, like, yeah, I actually did like you, but it's just like, she just wasn't in the right headspace at that time. And it's just like this place. It's just, it does that to people. It did that to her. And it seemed like she might have gotten better, but it still seems like there's something eating away at her. And so CJ accidentally knocks her into that thing and ends up, her head gets cut open. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And he's just like, he just wants answers about why, and maybe this is what led to her breaking up with her ex too, like, because they're just not given an explanation then or now, and it's like, I could tell you everything, like, and it would explain everything, but they won't let me. And he's like, who's they? And I immediately was like, well, that they seems like it could potentially be their families, her family, the Muldoons, but it's unclear. So, obviously it turns out, like, my dad's just covering for me and stuff like that, just because he doesn't want me to, he's just trying to do his best to protect me at the end of the day. But obviously Meg shows up asking Lou for questions, and Harry says, like, yeah, I'm thinking he told the truth. Like, he doesn't know where she is. He has nothing to do with her disappearance. But Meg's like, no, he's lying. It's like, yeah, sending your family out to beat him up won't give you the answers you want when he doesn't have them. And she's like, no, he's like fooling you. He's lying to you. I have no idea, like, who's responsible. It's like, oh, it's the island. Like, anyone could have done that. But Lou's like, if we investigate, we'll take down whoever did it. But it's like, yeah, but that boy, he calls that gash on my granddaughter's head, so I know he's responsible. And then Harry's like, Lou, did you tell her about that? He was like, no, like, I didn't talk to anyone about that. And it's like, okay, which, to be fair, Harry had every right to ask, because it's like, so that means if she knows about it, though, she claims that she didn't, the last time she saw Percy was like at 5, that wound and stuff like that happened like 7:15. So it's like, if that was the last time you saw her, you wouldn't know that she had that wound. So that means you're lying to us, because that means you saw her later that night. So maybe that's why some of that family is going super aggro, because they do have their own secrets to hide. Because no one's going to really touch them, because they're the Muldoons. They have a lot of push and pull. They have a lot of history in this town. So that's why even Lou's kind of like towards them. So I'm like, what is it about them? Like, what secrets are they keeping? What is she lying about? Is it that she's not, they have secrets to hide, but maybe she just doesn't think, because she said, because it's like, yeah, why didn't you bring up the fact that Percy left? Like, there had to be a reason. She's like, no, just like she left to experience the mainland. But it's like I didn't include it because I didn't think it was pertinent. It's like, you brought up like, oh, your granddaughter's weird recent behavior with that lunar stuff, but I think you're a lot more involved, or at least a lot more aware of that. So her grandma might be, to what we know, aside from the person that saw her grandma might be the last person to ever see. I don't think it was her on the video camera. Like, we still don't know who that is. I'm assuming it's going to be like Colin. I think it's going to end up being him, but we'll see how this all plays out. It might end up being Meg, but I don't think it is. I think it's going to end up being Colin, but we'll see. But other than that, Harry did at a party, where they're whispering about like, oh, did you hear about, like, people are whispering about what's going on in town? And Harry ran into the lady, which I was wrong. I thought it was Meg. It's like, no. I wasn't 100% sure, and it's like, no. He runs into the lady that was like the main lady there. So I'm assuming she's connected to all of this, that lunar stuff that Percy's kind of got mixed up in. Like, maybe that was kind of a jumping off point, and then eventually someone took advantage of it. Now, whether like it is like a cult thing and they're all a part of it, or whether it's like this is supposed to be its own thing, but someone like took it and took advantage of it and is manipulating and kind of controlling Percy, I don't know. But a lady, like, Harry's like, do I know you? She's like, no. She said, did I see you swimming last night? She's like, swimming, ha ha ha, and laughing. He's like, no, I guess I was wrong. She never was like, sounded like she was saying no to like, oh, I wasn't swimming, but I guess she's like not admitting to like, you caught me dancing naked under the moonlight. But it's like, it's got to be because she's connected to all this. There's definitely something there. So it definitely piqued Harry's interest, but he didn't like follow through it too much. But I think we'll get a little bit more of that going forward, because that kind of got sparked, and he's met her, so he's probably going to be asking her around town, or maybe he's going to run into her in the next episode or so. But a lot of interesting things we learned in this episode. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where ultimately all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.